Right now, while the world watches ceasefire negotiations and diplomatic handshakes on television screens, the most dangerous military chess move in modern Middle Eastern history is unfolding in near total silence, and almost nobody is talking about it. 13,000 of Pakistan's most elite soldiers have landed at a Saudi airbase that sits within striking distance of Iran's border. Fighter jets carrying radar systems powerful enough to detect and track targets hundreds of kilometers away are lining up on hot desert runways with their noses pointed directly at Tehran's military infrastructure. And buried beneath the sand, a 7 million barrel per day steel artery has just rendered Iran's most feared strategic weapon completely and mathematically irrelevant. What you are about to hear is not speculation. Every single detail in this breakdown is drawn from confirmed military deployments, official government announcements, and verified reporting from Reuters, Bloomberg, Al Jazeera, and defense intelligence sources within the past 72 hours. This is the story that the mainstream headlines are missing entirely, and it fundamentally changes the trajectory of this conflict and possibly the entire balance of power in the Middle East for decades to come. In the shadowy world of global diplomacy, the most devastating blows are sometimes dealt not on the battlefield, but at the negotiating table during a ceasefire process. And that is precisely what is happening right now during the Strait of Hormuz blockade. The Tehran regime is staring at a situation that has no modern precedent. An extraordinary and unprecedented military unification is rapidly taking shape between Saudi Arabia, located to Iran's southwest, and nuclear-armed Pakistan, the very nation that has been hosting ceasefire talks between Washington and Tehran in Islamabad. Think about that for a moment. The country mediating the peace talks has simultaneously deployed a massive military force to Iran's doorstep. Perhaps not even the United States fully anticipated the speed and scale of this move, which has shattered the outdated defense assumptions of the Persian Gulf and shifted regional military superiority in a single dramatic stroke. A cross-border show of force involving tens of thousands of ground troops, dozens of advanced fighter jets, airborne early warning platforms, and aerial refueling tankers. And critically, this move does not stand alone. For the first time in recorded history, the Gulf countries are displaying a coordinated military reflex of this magnitude and this level of integration. While Saudi Arabia fortifies its land and air power with Pakistani forces, the United Arab Emirates has accelerated its own coalition preparations at breakneck speed. Bahrain continues to host the headquarters of the United States Fifth Fleet. Qatar is providing full security for the U.S. Central Command headquarters at Al Udeid Air Base. Kuwait has opened Ali Al Salem Air Base to American operations. But for Tehran, the real bombshell, the development that has sent shockwaves through the corridors of Iranian military command, was Riyadh and Islamabad coming together under a binding mutual defense pact with teeth. On April 11, 2026, approximately 13,000 Pakistani soldiers touched down at King Abdulaziz Air Base in Saudi Arabia's eastern province. This deployment was officially confirmed by the Saudi Ministry of Defense and reported by Reuters, Bloomberg, Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, and The Hindu. These are not ordinary garrison troops filling a ceremonial role. This is a hand-picked, precision-assembled striking force drawn specifically from Pakistan's 10th and 11th Corps, two of the most formidable ground formations in the Pakistani military. These are units forged in the crucible of decades of counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency operations along some of the most hostile and unforgiving frontiers on the planet. We are talking about elite infantry and special forces personnel who have been tested in real combat, not on exercise fields, but in the mountains and valleys where asymmetric warfare is a daily reality. air defense specialists with the expertise to establish fully integrated missile traps across desert terrain in a matter of hours. Mechanized armored units trained and designed to halt and paralyze advancing enemy formations. This entire force has been embedded like reinforced concrete into Saudi Arabia's defense lines along its most strategically vulnerable eastern flank, the stretch of coastline that faces Iran directly across the narrow waters of the Gulf. The deployment location tells its own story. King Abdulaziz Air Base in Dhahran is one of the closest major Saudi military installations to the Iranian border. This base sits within breathing distance of the Strait of Hormuz, the choke point through which 20% of the world's oil supply and 20% of global liquefied natural gas trade normally flows. In plain terms, Pakistani jets and Pakistani soldiers have arrived right at Iran's front door. There is now a massive joint military force of Saudi Arabia and Pakistan standing practically one sortie, one flight, one order away from Iranian territory. For Iranian generals who have spent years fighting through proxy networks and asymmetric conflicts, using Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iraqi militias as their primary instruments of power projection, this represents a fundamentally different and far more terrifying challenge. They now face a professional, lavishly equipped, combat-hardened conventional army that fights with discipline, overwhelming firepower, and zero tolerance for half measures. But the truly transformative shift in the balance of power does not rest with the soldiers on the ground. It lives in the sky, in that silent and unforgiving arena where modern wars are decided before a single tank crosses a border. Between 10 and 18 JF-17 Thunder Block III fighter jets have deployed from Pakistan to King Abdulaziz Air Base. This deployment has been confirmed by defense analysts, official Saudi Defense Ministry statements, and reporting from Defense Security Asia and multiple aviation tracking sources. These aircraft are not ordinary jets gliding across a peaceful sky. They are fourth-generation plus technological platforms equipped with advanced active electronically scanned array radars mounted in their noses, systems capable of simultaneously detecting, tracking, and engaging multiple targets at extended ranges far beyond what older radar systems can achieve. Their electronic warfare suites can blind enemy radar installations, jam incoming missile guidance systems, and create a fog of electronic confusion across the electromagnetic spectrum. Under their wings, they carry Place 15 long-range air-to-air missiles, weapons specifically designed for beyond visual range engagements that give them a decisive advantage against Iran's drone swarms and aging, embargo-ravaged fighter fleet. And here is the critical military reality that makes this deployment so devastating for Tehran. Iran's air force has been decaying for decades under the weight of international sanctions that have cut off access to spare parts, modern avionics, and replacement airframes. According to Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, and the National Review, more than half of Iran's operational fighter inventory consists of American-made F-4 Phantoms and F-5 Tigers dating back to before the 1979 revolution, aircraft that are now more than 4 decades old. Fewer than 20 MiG-29s remain functional. These Pakistani JF-17 Block IIIs carry the capability to detect and destroy those aging Iranian aircraft from far beyond the horizon, before Iranian pilots even register a threat on their own screens. In the language of air combat, this is not a contest. It is a technological mismatch of devastating proportions. And the Pakistani air deployment does not consist solely of fighter jets. Flying right behind them are ZDK-03 airborne early warning and control aircraft, massive platforms that serve as flying command centers, scanning the skies across the entire Gulf region with powerful surveillance radars and coordinating air operations in real time. Pakistan has also deployed mid-air refueling tankers to Saudi Arabia, ensuring that combat air patrols and strike missions can continue uninterrupted for hours and even days without aircraft needing to return to base. The foundations of a military alliance that Tehran never anticipated and never prepared for are being laid in real time, right on its border. The legal and strategic groundwork for this deployment was established months before the current crisis erupted. On September 17, 2025, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif signed the Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement in Riyadh. This was reported and analyzed by Reuters, the Brookings Institution, the Rand Corporation, and the Gulf Research Center. This was not a routine weapons procurement deal or a joint exercise memorandum. It contains a mutual defense clause directly comparable to NATO's Article 5, explicitly stating that any aggression against either country shall be considered an aggression against both. That single clause is the legal engine powering everything unfolding in the Gulf today. It is the domino that shook Tehran to its foundations. Now layer Riyadh's own formidable military capabilities on top of this Pakistani deployment. The Saudi armed forces maintain approximately 250,000 active personnel across all branches, according to Global Firepower. The Royal Saudi Air Force operates more than 300 modern combat aircraft, including F-15SA and F-15S Advanced Eagles, Eurofighter Typhoons, and Panavia Tornadoes. On the ground, a sophisticated, multi-layered air defense network composed of Patriot, THAD, and SAMP-T missile batteries provides overlapping protective coverage against ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and unmanned aerial vehicle attacks. American forces directly augment this defensive architecture. F-35 stealth fighters and F-15 Strike Eagles stationed at Prince Sultan Air Base operate fully integrated with Saudi air defense systems. Between 3,000 and 4,000 U.S. military personnel are permanently stationed on Saudi soil, with additional rotational forces deployed on a continuous basis. What is emerging is a triad of Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and the United States forming a combined military presence in the Gulf of unprecedented scale and integration. The strategic picture, reflecting on the screens deep inside Tehran's underground military bunkers, is not merely a tactical setback. It is a psychological earthquake. Iran has suddenly found itself barrel to barrel not only with the wealthy Gulf monarchies it has long dismissed as paper tigers, but also with a neighboring nuclear-armed state possessing one of the largest and most experienced standing armies in the world. A single Iranian drone attempting to penetrate Saudi airspace, or a single ballistic missile launched toward Saudi territory, could now trigger the combined, coordinated, and disproportionate military retaliation of both Riyadh and Islamabad simultaneously. A geostrategic trap of staggering proportions has closed around Tehran. But Saudi strategic thinking extends far deeper than deploying aircraft and soldiers. The kingdom understands with cold clarity that decisive conflicts are won not only through firepower, but through the quiet destruction of an adversary's economic leverage. For years, Iran has brandished the Strait of Hormuz as its ultimate weapon of asymmetric blackmail, threatening to shut down the world's most critical oil choke point and plunge the global economy into darkness. Riyadh has moved to neutralize that exact threat, not with missiles, but with steel buried beneath the desert. On April 8, 2026, Iran's suicide drones and ballistic missiles struck what Tehran believed was the beating heart of Saudi Arabia's energy infrastructure. The Manifa oil field, the Kurais facilities, and critical pump stations along the east-west pipeline were targeted. Massive explosions and fireballs erupted. According to Reuters and CNBC, approximately 1.3 million barrels per day of combined production capacity and pipeline throughput were temporarily knocked offline. Tehran believed it had severed Riyadh's economic jugular vein. Just 4 days later, on April 12th, the Saudi Energy Ministry delivered its answer. Not with weapons, but with engineering. The kingdom announced the full restoration of its east-west oil pipeline to maximum capacity of 7 million barrels per day. This was confirmed by Bloomberg, Reuters, and Al Jazeera. This pipeline originates in the oil fields of the eastern province along the Gulf Coast, the zone most exposed to Iranian attack. It runs hundreds of kilometers beneath the desert, through routes that Iranian targeting systems cannot effectively reach. And it terminates at the port of Yanbu on the Red Sea coast, completely bypassing the Strait of Hormuz. 7 million barrels per day, flowing through a route that Iran simply cannot interdict. That single engineering achievement renders Tehran's decades-long Hormuz blackmail strategy mathematically irrelevant. Even if Iran sets the Gulf ablaze, Saudi oil quietly exits through the Red Sea and reaches world markets. And the geopolitical nightmare awaiting Tehran extends even further. The United Arab Emirates had already commissioned its own strategic bypass. The Habshan-Fujairah oil pipeline, stretching 380 kilometers and constructed at a cost of $4.2 billion, carries between 1.5 and 1.8 million barrels per day directly to the port of Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman without a single drop passing through the Strait of Hormuz. But the most humiliating detail for Tehran is hidden in the diplomatic irony behind this pipeline. The engineering, procurement, and construction contract was awarded to China Petroleum Engineering and Construction Corporation, a subsidiary of China National Petroleum Corporation. China, the one major power Iran considers its most reliable ally, the largest buyer of Iranian oil, the partner Tehran believed would never betray its interests, built with its own hands the infrastructure that allows the Gulf Arabs to escape Iran's energy stranglehold. The UAE's military posture has hardened with equal intensity. On March 27th, Abu Dhabi publicly declared its readiness to join the coalition against Iran. Jebel Ali Port was allocated for coalition logistics. Al Dhafra Air Base was opened to American forces. After April 8th, when Iran struck the UAE with ballistic missiles and drones targeting the Habshan gas complex and the Fujairah oil terminal, Abu Dhabi requested a UN Security Council resolution authorizing the use of force. The UAE has moved decisively beyond defense. Bahrain hosts the U.S. Fifth Fleet and has mobilized every resource to protect that installation. Kuwait has fully opened Ali Al Salem to American operations after its own oil facilities and water infrastructure were targeted. Qatar maintains full security over CENTCOM headquarters at Al Udeid. Individually, none of these nations would constitute a decisive force against Iran. But together, they form an interconnected military umbrella of extraordinary depth, with bases, ports, radar networks, air defense systems, and logistical arteries functioning as a single integrated organism. On the Iranian side, the picture is grim. Tehran is besieged militarily, economically, and diplomatically. Russia remains consumed by its own conflict. China has made clear through its commercial hedging that it will not sacrifice Gulf relationships to shield Iran. Even Oman, historically the Gulf state closest to Tehran, maintains a careful silence. Iran's proxy network remains a factor, but asymmetric proxy warfare cannot break a conventional siege of this magnitude. Tehran is experiencing the deepest strategic isolation in the history of the Islamic Republic. April 2026 marks a breaking point. Pakistan's deployment represents the first major activation of the 2025 Defense Pact. The Gulf's coordinated military reflex is birthing a new collective security architecture, and pipelines made of steel are consigning Iran's Hormuz blackmail to the dustbin of history. But a cornered actor remains the most dangerous actor. Iran's fast attack boats, drone swarms, and ballistic missiles can still ignite a wider conflagration. The chess game in the Gulf has reached a stage where every move carries irreversible consequences. Do you think this military unification will force Iran to back down, or will Tehran respond with an even more desperate and aggressive reflex as the walls close in? Share your thoughts in the comments. This is the Global Brief. Thank you for watching.